The town of Halvers Creek was known for its silence. Tucked away between two rolling hills and surrounded by pine forests, it was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked, where Sunday potlucks still mattered, and where tragedy didn't strike, or at least not out loud. Miriam Langley stood under a steel-gray sky, numb fingers clutching the edge of her husband's casket. Rain misted against her veil. The air smelled of wet earth and wilted lilies. Everything felt like it was happening underwater. Eli Langley, her husband of 18 years, had collapsed on their kitchen floor just 2 weeks ago. Massive cardiac arrest, the doctors said. Gone before the ambulance even made it up the gravel driveway. At 44, he was too young, too healthy, too present to just disappear. But death didn't care about fairness, and neither did grief. David stood just a few feet away, perfectly composed, his posture straight, his black overcoat sharp and dry as though the rain respected him. He hadn't cried, not once. Not when Miriam had called him that night screaming into the receiver, not when they lowered Eli into the ground, not even now. Instead, he had done what David always did, taken control. He made the funeral arrangements. He contacted the lawyer. He handled the obituary, the insurance, the endless decisions Miriam couldn't face. He even stayed at the house those first few nights making sure Miriam ate, that their teenage son Noah got out of bed, that the world didn't completely fall apart. People praised him. "David's a rock," they said. "You're lucky to have him." Miriam agreed, at first. But something about the way he folded Eli's clothes, how he walked into Eli's study like it still belonged to him, how he silenced certain conversations, especially when Eli's business came up, began to chip away at the comfort he provided. Then came the letter. It was found by accident, tucked inside one of Eli's old hardbound notebooks which had been shoved in the back of the study closet. Miriam opened it while looking for a copy of Eli's will. The letter was dated 2 years ago. It was addressed to her, and the first line read, "If you're reading this, it means something's gone wrong." Miriam read the first line again, her eyes trembling on the page. "If you're reading this, it means something's gone wrong." Eli's handwriting, always neat, always deliberate, carried a tension she'd never noticed before. He had written in black ink, but the strokes were uneven in places, like his hand had trembled, like he was afraid. She turned the page with shaking fingers. "I don't know when this will reach you, or even if it should, but I've written it 12 times and torn it up 12 more. You deserve to know the truth, even if it's too late, especially if it's too late." Miriam sat down hard on the edge of the bed. The house was too quiet. Noah had gone to stay with his best friend for the weekend. David was at the store picking up groceries. At least, that's what he said. Lately, he was always just out of sight. She read on. "There are things I should have told you years ago, things I should have faced when we still had time, but I was scared. Scared of what it would do to us, to you, to Noah, and scared of him. I don't know how much David has shown you, or what version of him you believe in, but the man you know isn't the man he is. He's not your protector, Miriam. He's not mine either." Miriam's breath caught in her throat. It started with one mistake, one cover-up, and it spiraled into something I couldn't stop. But that was all. The letter ended abruptly. No signature, no explanation. Just a single, final sentence scribbled hastily across the bottom of the page. "If he's still close to you, be careful." Miriam sat frozen, the paper trembling in her hands. Her heart pounded, not from grief this time, but from fear. What mistake? What cover-up? And what had David done to make Eli afraid? She suddenly remembered something odd, something she hadn't thought about until now. The night Eli died, David had arrived at the house just minutes after the ambulance. He lived 15 minutes away. She had never questioned it, until now. It started with a post-it note. Yellow, curled at the edge, stuck to the underside of Eli's desk drawer. It was barely legible, faded from years of neglect. Silo Point, ask J about Carter, keep separate from D. Miriam didn't know what it meant. She didn't recognize Silo Point or who J was. But one thing was clear: keep separate from D. David. Why had Eli felt the need to write that? And why hide it under a drawer where only someone desperate would look? She felt like she was falling into a story she hadn't signed up for. One where the husband she thought she knew had lived a life of fear, secrets, and whispered warnings. The edges of her memory began to blur. There were signs, little things she had brushed off. That time Eli came home late with a cut on his forehead and said he'd slipped on the ice. The night he deleted all his text messages in front of her. The time she overheard a tense phone call and Eli had claimed it was just work drama. It hadn't been drama. It had been David. After reading the letter, Miriam could no longer ignore the pieces that didn't fit, like the way David had insisted on handling the death certificate, or how he'd quickly moved to help her settle Eli's accounts, but never gave her access to Eli's personal laptop. That laptop was still locked in the safe. And now, with the house to herself, Miriam walked slowly to the upstairs closet where Eli's gun safe doubled as a secure file box. She hadn't touched it since the funeral. The key was still on the ring that Eli had always kept hidden in the garage. She inserted it and turned. Click. Inside, beneath a manila envelope of financial statements and an old Rolex, sat the laptop. Miriam lifted it with trembling hands and plugged it in. It powered on instantly. Password protected. Of course, she tried Eli's usual, the date of their wedding anniversary. No luck, then Noah's birthday. Still nothing. She tried a long shot. Eli's mother's maiden name, access granted. Her stomach flipped. As the screen flickered to life, Miriam saw a desktop with only one folder. It was labeled, "For her, if I fail." She double-clicked. Inside were documents, emails, photographs, and a video. Miriam hesitated before clicking play. The video was time-stamped 2 weeks before Eli died. She sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the laptop like it might vanish. Her heart beat so loud she could hear it echoing in her ears. She turned up the volume and hit play. The screen flickered. Then Eli appeared. He was sitting at his desk in the same study where she now watched him. The lighting was low, his face partially in shadow, but the fear in his eyes was unmistakable. He looked exhausted, older than she remembered. Defeated. He took a deep breath before speaking. "Miriam, if you're watching this, it means I didn't make it. Or, it means I gave up. Maybe both." Miriam felt her chest tighten. "I know this isn't how you should be hearing any of this. I've tried to find the courage to tell you for years, but every time I tried, David made sure I couldn't." Eli leaned forward. His voice cracked. "He's not who you think he is, and neither am I. I've lied to you, not because I wanted to, but because I was trapped." The silence stretched as Eli tried to compose himself. "It started 10 years ago. David came to me in trouble, said he'd borrowed money from some people, dangerous people. He begged me to help. He said he'd fix it, pay me back, that he just needed a clean bank account to wire some things through. So I agreed, but the money never stopped, and it wasn't borrowed. It was stolen." Eli's hands clenched in the video. "At first, I thought I could pull back, walk away. But David, he knew too much. He started using my accounts to move money. He knew passwords, knew how to make it all look clean. I didn't stop him. I was a coward. I thought I could keep you and Noah safe by staying quiet." Miriam's stomach churned. The room around her felt suddenly cold, but it got worse. 2 years ago, someone tried to expose him. A woman named June Carter. She worked at a finance firm in Nevada. She figured out what David was doing. They were laundering money through real estate, through Silo Point. That's what the note meant. She tried to reach out to me. I ignored her. 2 weeks later, she was dead. A car crash. But I don't think it was an accident. Miriam gasped. "I never had proof, but David flew out to Nevada that same weekend, and when he came back, he was calm, like it was done." Eli in the video stared into the camera. "I think he killed her, Miriam. I think he's capable of more than any of us realize. And now that you know, I'm so sorry. Protect Noah, and please, whatever you do, don't let him get close to you." The screen went black. Miriam didn't move for several minutes. Her world had shifted again. Only this time, there was no denial left. David hadn't just ruined lives with money, he had taken one, and he might not be finished. The following morning, Miriam sat in her car outside Halvers Creek Library watching the rain roll down her windshield. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the USB flash drive, the one she used to copy everything from Eli's laptop the night before. She wasn't sure what scared her more, the truth she was digging up, or the thought that David might already know she was digging. He'd texted her twice that morning, asking how she was holding up, offering to drop off groceries and dinner. The tone was kind. Too kind. Measured. Casual, but deliberate. He knows something's different. Inside the library, Miriam made her way to a secluded computer terminal. She plugged in the flash drive, took a deep breath, and opened the folder again. June Carter. The woman Eli had named the whistleblower. The first article she found was short and sterile. Local woman. Dies in single-car accident near Reno. June Carter, 34, was pronounced dead at the scene. No foul play suspected. Case closed within days. But something stuck out. According to the article, her car had veered off a straight, well-lit road. No skid marks, no sign of weather interference, no alcohol in her system. And yet, no investigation. Miriam dug deeper, pulling up financial blogs, archived posts, even a Reddit thread. In one post, a user claimed that Carter had been investigating dirty real estate deals linked to private shell companies. The thread had been deleted, but not before someone replied with a single name. Langley. Her heart thudded. It didn't say David or Eli, just Langley, but that was enough. She typed Silo Point, Nevada into the search bar. Up popped real estate listings, bland and glossy. But hidden in the legal fine print was something else. The development had been funded by a limited partnership out of Delaware. She clicked through corporate registry documents and her breath caught. The managing agent, DL Management Holdings, David Langley. Miriam leaned back in the chair, nausea rising. Eli hadn't been paranoid. He'd been careful, desperate, trying to shield her from a truth too dangerous to say out loud. Someone had died because of David, and if she wasn't careful, she might be next. Her phone buzzed. David Langley. "Hey, just checking in. Everything okay? Haven't heard back. Want to stop by tonight?" Miriam didn't respond. Instead, she shut the browser, pulled the flash drive, and walked out of the library with her coat zipped to her chin. She needed help, but not from anyone in Halvers Creek. This town, her town, had too many eyes, and David's shadow was stretching longer by the day. Miriam created a new email address under a fake name, emily.newberry2019@protonmail.com. She used a VPN. She accessed old forums and comment threads that hadn't seen activity in years, all while watching her windows at night. Her hands trembled as she typed, looking for anyone who worked with June Carter. I believe she was silenced. Please respond. I need to know the truth. She didn't expect a reply, but 36 hours later, she got one. It was a plain message. No greeting, no name. "You're not wrong. We should talk. Redbird Cafe, 3 p.m. Look for a man with a red notebook." The cafe was 3 towns over, just far enough to avoid Halvers Creek gossip. She arrived early, parked in the back, and kept her phone off. She chose a corner booth with a view of the door. At exactly 3:02 p.m., a tall man in a dark peacoat walked in. Salt and pepper beard, weathered face, thin-framed glasses, and in his hand a red leather notebook. He sat across from her without a word. His eyes scanned her face like he was trying to verify a story only he knew. "You're Miriam Langley," he finally said. She froze. He held up a hand. "Don't worry, I'm not here to hurt you. I knew your husband. Not well, but enough to know he was in over his head." Miriam's throat went dry. "Who are you?" "They called me the accountant. Not glamorous, but efficient." He tapped the notebook. "I worked with June. We were trying to expose the laundering network. David Langley was more than a player. He was an architect." She stared at him, not trusting yet, but listening. He flipped open the notebook, revealing pages of names, companies, shell corporations, all connected by lines and arrows. At the center, circled twice in red, D.L. Holdings, and underneath it, Carter, killed, Langley, dangerous. "She had evidence," he said. "Emails, bank records, audio recordings. She was going to take it to the FBI. But someone got to her first." Miriam swallowed hard. "Do you think he had her?" He looked at her, and for the first time the stranger's eyes softened. "I don't think." "I know." He leaned in closer. "David Langley doesn't leave loose ends." Miriam felt like the walls were closing in. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I couldn't help her," he said, "and because your husband tried. He was afraid, for you, for your kid, but he came to me. He wanted a way out. Did you give him one?" The man hesitated. "I gave him the number of an FBI contact. I don't know if he ever called, and 2 weeks later, he was dead." A long silence settled between them. Then the stranger slid a USB drive across the table. "Everything I've got, documents, routing paths, timestamps. You show this to the right people. Langley Burns." Miriam picked it up slowly, like it might explode in her hand. "But be careful," he warned, standing. "Once he senses you're against him, he won't play nice anymore." Then he was gone, leaving behind nothing but the red notebook and a name: Agent Serena Holt, FBI Organized Crime Division. Boston. Miriam returned to Halvers Creek just after sunset. The town looked the same. Quiet streets, swaying porch lights, the hum of crickets in the distance. But something felt wrong. She pulled into the driveway, hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The USB drive sat in her purse like a ticking bomb. The porch light was on. She hadn't left it on. She got out slowly, keys in hand. Her fingers grazed the tiny pepper spray canister on her keychain, just in case. When she stepped into the house, it hit her instantly. Something had been disturbed, not a break-in, not chaos. Worse, subtle movements like someone had wanted her to doubt herself. A photo frame was turned slightly on the hallway shelf. Her late husband's cologne bottle had been moved an inch on the bathroom sink. The closet door in Eli's study stood ajar. She felt cold all over. She checked the safe, still locked. The laptop, untouched, but her desk drawer had been opened. Her mind raced. Was David here, watching, testing her? Her phone buzzed. A text from David. "We need to talk, face to face, tonight." Her hands shook as she read it. She didn't respond. She sat down at the dining table and stared at the USB drive. 1,000 thoughts collided in her mind. She needed to call Agent Holt. She needed to leave. She needed to protect Noah, who was still at his friend's house, thankfully. Her phone buzzed again. David Langley. "You found something, didn't you?" Her heart stopped. How could he know? She locked every door and window. Then she grabbed her purse, stuffed the USB drive deep inside a sunglasses case, and slipped on her coat. She needed to get out. Now. But as she reached for her car keys, headlights flared in the driveway. A black SUV, David. He didn't knock. He didn't call. He just stood there, behind the glass-paneled front door, hands in his coat pockets, smiling. Calm, like a man who knew he had nothing to fear. The knock on the door was soft. Too soft. Miriam stood frozen in the hallway, her hand just inches from the deadbolt. David's figure was outlined through the glass, tall, still, confident. He didn't shift his weight, didn't fidget. He waited like a man who knew the door would open, and after a long breath, it did. Only halfway. Miriam's voice was cold. "What do you want?" David smiled gently, his voice smooth. "To talk. I think you've been confused." She didn't move. The door remained wedged between them. He took a slow step forward, stopping just short of the threshold. "I know what Eli left behind. I know you've been looking through things you weren't supposed to find, things that, taken out of context, might scare you." She studied his face. Calm, controlled, no cracks. "I watched the video," she said flatly. David didn't flinch. "Then you saw a desperate man trying to bury his own guilt," he replied. Miriam blinked. "You're saying he lied." "I'm saying Eli wasn't the martyr he painted himself to be." David leaned against the doorframe as though this were a casual drop-in. "He started it, Miriam. I covered for him. I protected him. And in return, he tried to frame me when it all started to crumble." "That's not true." David's voice dropped an octave. "He told you about June Carter, didn't he?" Silence. "I warned him. I told him to stay away from her. She was digging into things far above her pay grade. She had enemies. Real ones. Eli thought he could save her, like it would make up for everything else, but he got scared when she got too close. So he backed out, left her hanging." "You're lying." David's smile faded, his eyes narrowing just slightly. "No, Miriam. I'm just better at seeing the whole picture than you are." He stepped forward. She stepped back, and instinctively her hand moved to the edge of the door, ready to slam it. "You think I'm the villain," he said softly. "But Eli made choices. I didn't force him to move money. I didn't force him to lie to you, and I sure as hell didn't stop him from going to the FBI." Miriam's heart raced. "He never went to the FBI." David tilted his head. "Are you sure about that?" The room felt like it dropped 10 degrees. David took a breath, then said something that unmoored her entirely. "Lee wasn't just scared of me. He was scared you'd find out what he did before the money, before Silo Point. You think you knew him, but ask yourself why he kept so many secrets from you." Miriam gripped the door harder. "Get out," she said through her teeth. David didn't argue. He simply stepped back, fixing his coat collar. "I'll give you space," he said, voice suddenly gentle again. "But be careful what boxes you open, Miriam. The truth doesn't always free people. Sometimes it buries them." Then he turned and walked down the steps, calm as ever. And for the first time, Miriam realized something terrifying. David wasn't afraid of being caught, because he still had cards left to play. Miriam couldn't sleep. David's words echoed in her head like a curse. Ask yourself why he kept so many secrets from you. At 2:43 a.m., with the house silent and her nerves fraying, she crept back into Eli's study and powered on his laptop again. The USB from the accountant still sat on her desk, untouched. But tonight she wasn't looking for what David had done. She was looking for what Eli had tried to hide. She opened the documents folder again and scanned through names she hadn't fully explored. There it was, a folder titled simply Archive. It required a second password. She sat back thinking. It wouldn't be anything obvious. She tried their son's middle name, Eli's father's name, and finally the name of their dog, Jackson, who died when Noah was little. Click, the folder opened. Inside, she found hundreds of items. PDFs, JPEGs, and documents going back more than a decade. She opened the first email. It was dated July 2003, 12 years before Eli ever got tangled with David. The subject line read, "Regarding the incident." Her pulse quickened. The message was short. "We agreed this would remain buried. You said it was handled. If anyone else finds out, I'm done protecting you." DL David Miriam clicked the attachment. It was labeled, "Incident Report, July 2003, Confidential." It was a scanned document, police header, filed in Reno, Nevada. Her eyes scanned the first line and her breath caught. Subject, Eli Langley, brought in for questioning regarding allegations of misconduct and financial misappropriation by former student intern June Carter, age 21. Her body turned to ice. The next line made her stomach turn, alleged inappropriate relationship. Carter later withdrew complaint, citing fear of retaliation. No charges filed, matter closed, sealed at request of involved parties. Miriam leaned back, the room tilting around her. June Carter. She hadn't just been a whistleblower, she had known Eli. Years before the fraud, before the real estate laundering, before Halvers Creek. Miriam clutched her head. What the hell had Eli done, and what had David covered up for him? She opened another document, an email from Eli to David, dated 2 weeks before his death. "I can't keep carrying this, David. What we did, what we buried, it's rotting from the inside. I want out. I want to tell her." "If you do, we're both dead," David replied. "This doesn't end with a confession. It ends with silence." Miriam sat motionless. Eli had done something awful, and David had buried it, maybe to use it, maybe to own him. Suddenly, Eli's fear made sense. The guilt, the insomnia, the way he'd started pulling away the last few years of his life. The control David had wasn't just about money, it was about leverage. Miriam realized, with horrifying clarity, that both men had blood on their hands. She was holding the match that could burn them both to the ground. Agent Serena Holt looked nothing like Miriam expected. No sunglasses, no trench coat, just a sharp navy blazer, a notepad, and eyes that didn't miss a single detail. They met at a small federal office annex in Boston, where Miriam had driven 4 hours straight without stopping. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't slept. Her knuckles were white from the steering wheel when she walked into the lobby and asked for Serena by name. Now she sat across from the agent in a beige interview room with a wall clock that ticked too loudly. Serena flipped through the printed index of the files Miriam had handed her on the USB. "Where did you get this?" "I found it in a red notebook," Miriam replied, her voice low but steady. "A man who used to work with June Carter gave it to me." "Is he willing to talk?" "I don't think he'll show his face again." Serena tapped the table lightly with her pen. "There's enough in here to open 3 separate investigations: shell companies, fraud, potential obstruction of justice, and if the metadata on these emails checks out, we may be looking at federal conspiracy and possibly homicide." Miriam swallowed hard. He killed her, didn't he? Serena didn't answer, but her silence said enough. "You have to protect my son," Miriam added quickly. "David doesn't know I came here. Not yet. But if he finds out, I don't think he'd hesitate." Serena nodded. "You need to go home, pack a bag, and be ready. If we move forward, things will move fast. We may need you to testify." "Testify?" Serena leaned forward. "You're not just a witness, Miriam. You're the one who brought this to light. If this goes to trial, you'll be the prosecution's anchor." Miriam's blood turned cold. "He'll come after me. We'll do everything we can to protect you." Miriam didn't answer. Her hands rested on the table, knotted together. As she left the office, Serena's voice echoed after her. "Whatever he was hiding, you did the right thing." Miriam returned to Halvers Creek just after midnight. She drove slowly through the winding hills, headlights bouncing off the trees. The air was thick, the world too quiet. When she pulled into the driveway, she knew something was wrong before she even stepped out of the car. The porch light was off. She never left it off. Her heart pounded as she approached the front door, her keys trembling in her hand. The door wasn't locked. She stepped inside, slowly, carefully. The house was dark, but not empty. The smell hit her first. Cologne, faint but unmistakable. David's. She flicked on the light. The living room had been torn apart, not violently, but surgically. Cushions displaced, photo frames face down, her drawers emptied. She ran to the study. The desk was open, the USB gone. Miriam's knees buckled. She grabbed her phone, turned it on, and found one new message. David Langley. You should have stayed out of it. Not really. After the break-in, Agent Holt arranged for her and Noah to be placed under temporary protective watch in a small apartment in western Massachusetts, under a different name. Holt assured her the agency was moving, quietly. But bureaucracy had its pace, and David Langley had always been faster than paper trails. Still, Miriam wasn't interested in waiting anymore. He took Eli. He took June. He tried to take her. And now, she had nothing left to lose. She met Agent Holt again 2 days later in a low-security federal building near Pittsfield. She had something with her this time, a second USB drive. I made a backup, she said, sliding it across the table. Before he took the first one. Holt smiled faintly. Smart. I want it out there, Miriam said. The story, the crimes, even Eli's role. I want it public. Are you sure? Holt asked, her tone cautious. Once this is out, there's no pulling it back. Miriam nodded slowly. It needs to burn. All of it. That night, a redacted summary of the Langley files leaked to a popular financial crimes blog run by a former Wall Street analyst. The post was picked up by Reddit, then by a fringe news site, and then by a mainstream media outlet within hours. The headline read, Whistleblower's Cold Case Tied to Billion-Dollar Laundering Scheme, and a Dead CEO. Within 24 hours, the FBI had internal orders to escalate their case. Within 48, a formal investigation into DL Holdings was reopened under federal scrutiny. And somewhere in Halvers Creek, David Langley began to sweat. Back in the safe house, Miriam's phone lit up again. Unknown number, no voicemail, just silence. She didn't answer. Not at first, but on the third attempt, she picked up. Hello? Silence, then a breath. You think this makes you safe? David's voice was quieter than usual. Strained. You have no idea what you've started. You're finished, she said. You just don't know it yet. He laughed, but it was hollow. You think I'm afraid of the FBI? I built walls around this long before you figured out how to ask questions. Then why are you running? She snapped. I'm not running, he said. I'm cleaning up. Click. The line went dead. But David's next move wasn't subtle. Agent Holt received an alert. A flagged surveillance ping from a long-defunct burner phone registered to a shell corporation linked to DL Holdings. The call had been made to Las Vegas, and the number it reached belonged to someone they didn't expect. A former enforcer turned whistleblower named Mateo Alvarez. Once a silent partner in the laundering operation, Mateo had turned state's evidence in exchange for immunity, then vanished. But Agent Holt had been tracking his ghost for years. Now, with David making desperate calls, Mateo had resurfaced, and he wanted to talk. Agent Holt met him first, alone. But when she returned, she told Miriam the truth. Mateo's been waiting for this, and he's willing to bait David, if you're willing to be part of the setup. Miriam stared at her. You want to use me as bait? Holt hesitated. Only if you're ready. Miriam took a breath. No, she said, steady and clear. I'm not bait. I'm the closer. The final move. The abandoned property sat in the outskirts of Clark County, Nevada, just far enough from Las Vegas to be forgotten, just close enough to vanish without a trace. It used to be a foreclosure flip under one of David's shell companies. A hollow shell of a place now, cracked tiles, graffiti on the walls, boarded windows, and a wind that howled through every broken crevice. It was perfect. Agent Holt's team swept the building, secured audio surveillance, positioned 2 federal vehicles a few hundred yards out, and gave Miriam her final instructions. "You don't push him," Holt warned. "You let him come to you." Miriam nodded, clutching the small wire mic hidden in the collar of her jacket. "And if he pulls a gun, we've got snipers, we'll be in fast." But Miriam had stopped depending on promises. She needed to see David's face when he realized he'd lost, needed to hear him admit it, needed closure, not just justice. 2:07 p.m. David arrived. He stepped out of a rented gray Dodge Charger, dressed in all black, carrying nothing visible, which somehow made him more terrifying. He walked into the building like he'd owned it yesterday. Miriam stood in the main room, arms crossed, the wind creeping in through the cracks behind her. Dust danced in the light that streamed through the rafters. "Of all the places," David said, scanning the room, "you picked the tomb." "You built it," she replied. He gave a thin smile. "I thought we could skip the theatrics, but you're dressed like you're waiting for a curtain call." "I wanted to see your face when it all came crashing down." David sighed and took 2 slow steps forward. "You really don't understand what you've done." "Oh, I understand," Miriam said, her voice cold. "I understand Eli was going to expose you. I understand you've been laundering money and burying people to keep it quiet. And I understand now, you were never protecting him. You were owning him." David's expression didn't change. "What you don't understand," he said slowly, "is that he came to me, not the other way around." Miriam froze. David's voice dropped. "You think I pulled him in?" "Number." "He brought me the Carter girl's file. Told me she was going to go public. Told me we needed to stop her. He wanted leverage. He wanted to bury it." "No," Miriam said softly, shaking her head. "He was already guilty," David said. "All I did was make it permanent." Silence. "Eli wasn't some innocent man caught in a web," he continued. "He was a coward. He used me to clean up his mess, and then he couldn't live with it." Miriam swallowed hard. "You're lying." David stepped closer. "Ask yourself this, Miriam. If he really wanted to protect you, why didn't he tell you the truth? Why didn't he confess years ago? He was trying to break her." But Miriam didn't move. "You killed him, didn't you?" she asked. "You knew he'd flipped. You knew he was going to the FBI." David's eyes darkened. "I didn't kill Eli," he said, voice low. "I just let nature run its course. Then," the smile, "I made sure he didn't get help fast enough." Outside, Agent Holt's earpiece crackled. "He just confessed," a tech said. "Move," Holt commanded. Back inside, David took 1 step too close. Miriam whispered, "They're listening." He paused. Something in his face changed. Fear for the first time. Then, rage. He reached into his coat. Miriam flinched, but before he could pull anything, the front door crashed open. "FBI, hands up." David froze, caught in a triangle of red dots and shouting voices. He didn't fight. He didn't run. He just stood there, staring at Miriam as if she had pulled the trigger herself, and then he smiled. "I hope you never find peace." They cuffed him, dragged him out. The silence afterward felt surreal, the kind that arrives only after years of noise. Miriam stood in the empty house surrounded by dust and ghosts, and for the first time in years, she could breathe. The trial was held in Boston. David Langley entered the courtroom in a tailored suit, handcuffed but still composed, his expression unreadable. The media circled like vultures. The headline ran for weeks. "Brother-in-law turned mastermind. David Langley on trial for fraud, obstruction, and suspected role in cold case death." Miriam watched him from the front row, her hands clenched in her lap. Beside her sat Agent Serena Holt, calm and focused, and behind them, her son, Noah, just 18, his jaw tight, his eyes hollow. He hadn't asked many questions. But he'd insisted on being there. The courtroom wasn't quiet. There were whispers, reporters scribbling, the shuffle of paper and polished shoes. But inside Miriam, it was silent, like she was watching the final scene of a play that had taken her years to understand. They laid out the shell companies, the false identities, the money trails, the witness manipulation. They played the audio from the trap in Nevada. They introduced Mateo Alvarez as a key witness, and they played the video, Eli's video. The jury saw a broken man, a husband, a father, a man unraveling under the weight of a past he couldn't escape. But the defense? They weren't quiet either. They painted David as a loyal brother who took the fall for a man who lost control. They cast doubt on Eli's integrity. They presented the 2003 incident report. They implied June Carter's death was a coincidence, a tragedy, not a murder. Miriam took the stand on the fifth day. Her hands trembled slightly as she swore in. The room leaned in as she spoke. She told the truth about Eli, about David, about herself. She didn't paint Eli as a saint. She told them about the lies, the guilt, the betrayal, but she also told them how hard he'd tried to make it right, how much he loved his son, how deeply he feared what David would do if the truth came out. "I lost my husband twice," she said, once to his guilt, and once to the man who used it against him. The courtroom was silent. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all major counts: wire fraud, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and accessory after the fact to homicide. A 35-year sentence. No chance of parole. David Langley didn't flinch as it was read. He just turned once, only once, to look at Miriam, and smiled, like he still knew something she didn't. Outside the courthouse, flashbulbs exploded. Miriam didn't speak to the press. She walked quietly down the steps, holding Noah's hand. That night, in their rented apartment, Noah broke the silence. "Was Dad a bad person?" Miriam stared at him. "No," she said, "but he was a weak one, and sometimes weakness lets monsters in." Noah nodded. He didn't speak again. Later, alone, Miriam opened Eli's video one last time. She paused it on his face, scared, haunted, but still him. She closed the laptop, then opened a new document and began to write. Not a confession, not a memoir, but a record. So Noah would one day understand the whole truth. Not just about Eli or David, but about what people become when fear wins, and how sometimes the ones who break you are the ones who say they love you most. The cabin sat just outside New Hampshire's White Mountains, nestled between tall birch trees and the edge of a quiet lake. It had been Eli's idea, a someday project. He'd bought it before Noah was born, always promising they'd retire there, maybe live off the grid, grow old in peace, but life got in the way. Then lies. Then death. Miriam hadn't been back since the funeral. Not until now. It was spring, early May. The snow was gone, but the air still held a chill. Moss had crept up the side of the cabin. The windows were dusty, but intact. The door creaked open with a familiar groan. She walked through each room slowly, memories clinging to every wooden beam and faded rug. She let herself sit by the empty fireplace, her fingertips grazing the old rocking chair Eli had once bought second-hand. She wasn't here for closure. She was here for answers. In the attic, beneath a pile of unused tarps and tools, she found a small fireproof box, the kind that held old deeds, family photos, or tax returns. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a letter addressed in Eli's handwriting. "Miriam, if you ever make it here." Her hands shook as she sat on the attic floor, the dust clinging to her jeans, and unfolded the note. "It wasn't long. I thought I had more time. Isn't that how every regret starts? I kept secrets from you. Some to protect you, others because I couldn't face what I'd done. The truth is, I failed you long before David ever did. I let ambition and fear decide who I was. I was complicit, weak, and I don't deserve forgiveness. But if you're reading this, I hope you came to this place because you still carry a little bit of us. The good parts, the mornings, the laughter, Noah's first steps on this porch. I hope you still have that, even if it hurts. And if you do, then maybe, just maybe, not everything we had was a lie. Love you, in spite of it all. Eli. Miriam didn't cry. She just sat there, letter in hand, letting the silence settle in. Maybe Eli didn't deserve redemption. But maybe grief wasn't about what people deserved. Maybe it was about what you chose to carry, and what you chose to leave behind. She burned the letter in the fireplace that night, not out of anger, but because some things weren't meant to live forever. Some things just needed to end. That summer, Miriam and Noah moved to a new city, quiet, far from Halvers Creek, far from whispers and sideways glances. She started working part-time at a local nonprofit that helped women escaping financial abuse. Noah started college, psychology major. Sometimes he asked questions. Sometimes she answered. They visited the cabin every year, not out of guilt, but out of grace. Because sometimes the only way to live with the truth is to forgive the part of yourself that ignored it, and to never, ever stop asking, what lives beneath the surface? Eli was always the golden one. Their mother used to say David was the flame, but Eli was the lighthouse, steady, bright, meant to guide others home, and for a long time, David believed her. He Langley boys grew up in a house that taught silence. Their father, a cold man with military posture and moral absolutism, never raised his voice, only his expectations. Weakness was a sin. Emotion was a liability. Mistakes were buried, never discussed. Eli followed the rules. David found ways around them. By the time they reached their 20s, Eli had the perfect resume, summa cum laude, business degree from Dartmouth, polished shoes, clear eyes, a woman who adored him. David bounced from one venture to the next. A real estate license, a failed bar, a stint in digital marketing that ended with a lawsuit he never talked about. Still, Eli never gave up on him. Hat was the first mistake. The real unraveling started in 2003, though Eli never admitted it, not even to Miriam. David had come to him that summer, bloodied and frantic. A woman, Nicolette, had threatened to go to the police. She knew about the tax evasion, the fake clients, the forged signatures. "I need a loan," David had said. "Just a bridge. I'll fix it." Eli had hesitated, but in the end, he wired the money. $75,000. No paperwork, no interest, no receipt, just family. But the money didn't fix anything. It simply bought silence, for a time, and in the silence, David began to dig in. "You're too clean," he told Eli once. "You think being good makes you untouchable. But people like me, we know how the dirt works." Eli laughed it off, but part of him admired David's fearlessness, his hunger, and that was the second mistake. In 2007, Eli needed help. A lucrative development deal had collapsed. Investors were threatening to pull out. A junior staffer, June Carter, had raised red flags about offshore wire transfers Eli barely remembered authorizing. There was talk of an audit, so Eli did something he never imagined. He called David. David showed up within hours. No judgment, no lecture, just a plan. "We'll move some money, clean the books, throw in a few straw buyers on those condos. You'll be clear in 6 months." Eli asked one question. "Is it legal?" David didn't answer, and Eli didn't ask again. That was the third mistake. Years passed, their roles reversed. David became Eli's fixer. Eli became David's leverage. .nd somewhere along the way, the lines blurred between brother and captor, helper and handler, victim and accomplice. David once said to him, over drinks, "You think I ruined you, but the truth is, I completed you." Eli had gone silent that night, and for the rest of his life he never stopped trying to untangle which version of David was true: the brother who pulled him out of a fire, or the one who lit the match. The name had appeared twice. Once in an old spreadsheet hidden inside Eli's laptop, a series of offshore transfers labeled only N. Arlen, retainer. And once in a message from David to Eli, buried inside the encrypted email archive. She was a necessary piece, and you knew the cost. Don't pretend otherwise. Miriam hadn't thought much of it at first. Names meant nothing in isolation. But now, with more clarity than ever, she was starting to see the pattern. Every person David used was either disposable, compromised, or both. So, who was Nicolette Arlen? A bit of digging uncovered her. Age 46, last known address in Bridgeport, Connecticut. She ran a boutique real estate marketing firm out of a small home office listed in one Yelp review as strict, sharp, and cold as ice. No photos, no social media presence. But the payment trail led to her, and the timeline aligned. 2003 to 2006. Large, frequent deposits. 2007. Silence. 2008. A single email from Eli's archive. I never meant to hurt you. I thought it was over. Please don't talk to anyone. He said he'd handle it. Miriam booked the train that night. Nicolette Arlen answered the door in a black turtleneck and gold earrings, her hair pinned up in a loose twist. She didn't look surprised to see Miriam. Only tired. "You're Eli's wife," she said, not a question. Miriam nodded. Nicolette stepped aside. I wondered how long it would take. They sat at a small kitchen table surrounded by books, wine glasses, and framed pictures of Nicolette and no one else. She didn't offer tea. Just the truth. I met David in 2002. I was working with a property investment group in D.C. He was charming, dangerous in the kind of way that only looks sexy when you're young and don't know better. Was it romantic? Miriam asked quietly. For about 3 months. Then it was strategic. Then it was blackmail. Miriam leaned forward. He had me build a fake company under my name. Arlen Strategies. I didn't know it was part of a laundering system until it was too late. He said if I backed out, I'd go to jail. Or worse. And Eli, Miriam whispered. Nicolette looked down. He was the leverage. Miriam's heart dropped. He thought we met by accident, Nicolette continued. He thought I was just a consultant on a project. We started talking. I let it happen. David told me to. He needed Eli in too deep to ever walk away. Did you sleep with him? A long pause. Yes, she said. The air between them thickened. I didn't mean to fall for him, Nicolette said quietly. And I didn't mean to become a weapon. But I did. And when I tried to walk away, David threatened to expose everything, to ruin us both. Miriam's fingers tightened around her cup. Did Eli love you? I think he loved the idea of escape. And I think I was the only person who saw the cracks before they broke. Nicolette stood, walked to a drawer, and returned with a flash drive. I kept everything. Emails, bank statements, even recordings. Why? Because I knew this day would come, she said. And because I wanted someone to finally end what I helped start. Miriam took the drive. Before she left, Nicolette said one more thing. David doesn't destroy people all at once. He drains them, slowly, until they don't even recognize the version of themselves they're trying to save. That night, back in her apartment, Miriam opened the drive. Inside was a folder labeled The Price of Silence, and inside that folder was a video she'd never seen before. One dated just 5 days before Eli's death. The first time he met David, it was 2011. Vegas. Mateo was managing high-risk property flips and had a reputation for moving dirty money without leaving fingerprints. David had walked into his life wearing a watch worth more than Mateo's entire childhood. "I'm not interested in gambling," David had said. "I'm interested in insurance, the kind that doesn't require paperwork." What followed was a 6-year partnership built on silent transactions, buried cash, offshore noise, and names that didn't exist. David never used threats. He didn't have to. His power was precision, charm, calculation. But when June Carter entered the picture, everything changed. Mateo met her once. It was supposed to be a handoff. Files, anonymous, quick, but June insisted on meeting face to face. She was smarter than anyone gave her credit for. Too smart. She already knew half of what Mateo had been paid to conceal. She just needed the final piece. "I don't care about the money," she said that night. "I care about the people who've been erased." She was fire, contained, burning slow, dangerous. Mateo didn't sleep the night after their meeting. He knew David wouldn't allow her to walk away, and he knew what was coming before the call ever came. "She's becoming a liability." "She's a person, David. So were we." June died 2 nights later. Officially? A car crash, a blown tire, no foul play. But Mateo knew better. He'd gotten the message before sunrise. Clean, final, thank you. He never asked who, but he knew who made the call. He knew who cut the brakes. He knew he left 2 months later. No warning, no confrontation, just silence. He disappeared into a forgotten city with a new name, a busted shoulder, and nightmares that never left. He kept the red notebook because forgetting felt like betrayal, and when Agent Serena Holt finally found him years later, he handed over everything. "Why now?" she asked him. "Because she believed in something," Mateo had said. "And so did Eli. They died trying to fix what we let rot." Now, as he sat outside a federal holding center waiting to testify, Mateo thought of one thing. He had helped build the fire. But maybe, finally, he could help put it out. Miriam hadn't touched Eli's second phone in weeks. It had been stored in a small cardboard box with old chargers and expired insurance cards, sealed with blue tape left in the back of the guest bedroom closet. She only found it because she was looking for one of Noah's childhood photo albums. It powered on instantly, fully charged, almost waiting. The messages were encrypted, but not well. They dated back to before Eli's death, texts from an unsaved number, phrases that felt off, cold, strategic. "Have you asked her yet?" "Your dad wouldn't want you to know the full story." "She's not as innocent as you think, Noah." The number wasn't hard to trace. David. There were over 60 messages, spread across 6 months, photos, links, even a recording. One message read, "I just want you to know your father left more behind than debt. I can help you get answers, if you're ready." Miriam sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the phone like it might burn her hands. Noah had spoken to David, not once, not in grief, but before Eli died. That night, after dinner, she sat across from her son and placed the phone gently on the table. "Noah." He looked up from his plate, cautious. "Yeah? I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." His shoulders tensed. "Okay." She turned the screen toward him. The messages stared back at them like ghosts. Noah's face drained of color. "How long?" she asked softly. He didn't answer right away. Then, "Since October." Miriam felt something inside her collapse. "Why?" Noah looked away. "Because he was the only one telling the truth." She stared at him. He said, "Dad lied. About money, about people. He said you were covering for him, that everyone was, and I didn't know what to believe." "So you went to him?" "He came to me," Noah snapped. "He found me online. Said he had things my father left behind. Things I deserved to know." Miriam's voice dropped. "Did he threaten you?" "No. That's the worst part. He was nice, supportive, like he understood me." He looked down, ashamed. "And you believed him?" "For a while," Noah whispered. "Until the night of the break-in. When he took your USB, I knew, Miriam wiped at her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want it to be true. About Dad. About me. About what I let happen." She reached across the table, took his hand. "You're not him," she said. "You're not Eli, and you're not David." Noah nodded, but the silence between them said what neither of them could. He'd come close. It was buried in a folder labeled Personal Do Not Delete, tucked between innocuous receipts and scanned bank forms. A single voice memo, time-stamped, March 3rd, 11:42 p.m. 5 days before he died. Miriam hit play. The screen dimmed, and Eli's voice, tired, low, slurred like he'd been drinking, filled the room. "If someone's listening to this, then maybe it means I didn't go through with it. Or maybe I did, and this is just insurance. I don't know anymore. I've been packing all night. I found the burner phone Mateo gave me. I copied the records, the transfers, everything. I even typed out a statement. I was supposed to leave tonight. There's a train out of Boston at 1:10 a.m. I even booked the ticket under a fake name, Gideon Nance. Stupid, I know. I was going to go straight to Agent Holt. Hand it over. Let them burn it all down." Miriam froze. He had been so close, but I couldn't do it. Not because I'm afraid of prison, not even David. I could handle those. It's you. It's Noah. It's what happens when the cameras show your husband's face under the headline, Fraud. When our son has to say his father was a liar, when you have to carry that weight, all because I couldn't keep a boundary with my own brother. I keep telling myself this isn't my fault, that David corrupted me, but the truth is, I opened the door. He just walked through. And now I don't know who I'm protecting anymore, me or the version of me you still believe in. Miriam's breath hitched. If I stay, I'll rot from the inside out. If I leave, I take all of you with me. Long silence. I'm not the man you married. I think I stopped being him a long time ago. I'm sorry, Miriam, for everything I said, and everything I didn't say sooner. I hope someday you find the truth, not just about me, but about who you are without me. Clicky Room was still when the audio ended. No music, no closure, just that empty digital silence. Miriam stared at the screen, not crying, not shaking, just still. He had almost run. He had almost saved himself. But in the end, he couldn't bear the shame of being known. Truly known. Yes. He was dangerous in ways no one dared to say aloud. She'd almost forgotten the photo. It had slipped from her memory, buried beneath layers of revelations, courtrooms, confessions, and grief. But it was still there, in a box marked Eli's desk, tucked behind dusty files in the back of her closet. David. Smiling, standing beside a woman with auburn hair, sunglasses, and a slight, unreadable smile. They stood in front of a modern ranch house, the same address later linked to the Silo Point development in Nevada. Miriam turned the photo over. Springfield. July 2009. D and C. That was all. It took 2 days of digging, multiple emails to former Silo Point contractors, and one carefully worded inquiry through Serena Holt's network before Miriam had a name. Clara Vesant, former escrow manager. Age 43. No digital footprint. No tax returns filed in a decade. No recent employment history. A ghost. But ghosts have places they haunt. Serena's contact tracked her down, living under a different name, in a women's recovery home outside of Eureka, California. Miriam called once, explained everything, asked for 5 minutes. Clara agreed. The home was quiet, clean, a former church converted into a transitional shelter. Clara looked older than the photo. Hollow eyes, thin, but alert. "I remember you," she said as Miriam entered. "You're the wife?" "Yes," Miriam said. Or, "I was." They sat outside on a bench beneath a eucalyptus tree. Miriam held up the photo. "Was this your house?" Clara laughed bitterly. "Was anyone's house, really? David bought it for me, said it was mine, said he loved me, said I was the only one who saw him clearly. Did you believe him?" Clara looked off into the distance. I wanted to. A long silence. "I didn't know about the money at first," she continued. "I thought he was just smart. Connected. He told me his brother was the uptight one, that he was trying to protect the family from itself." Miriam said nothing. Then I started noticing things. Meetings in the middle of the night, secret accounts, calls he'd take outside. One day I found a briefcase, documents, deeds, cash, a gun. "Did you confront him?" Clara shook her head. "I tried to leave." She paused. "He broke my jaw." Miriam's stomach twisted. "That was the end of it," Clara whispered. "I disappeared, changed my name, went off the grid, thought if I stayed quiet, he'd forget me." Miriam placed the photo back in her bag. "He didn't forget you?" Clara turned. "How do you know?" "Because he kept the picture." Another silence. "I thought I was the only one," Clara said, "but he had a way of making everyone feel that way. Special, chosen, owned." Miriam nodded. "I think he believed it too." "Is he in prison?" "Yes, for a long time." Clara looked down at her hands, then whispered, "Good." Miriam left the home in silence, the weight of Clara's words following her like a shadow. David Langley hadn't just destroyed lives on paper, he'd destroyed people, from the inside out. That night, Miriam wrote in her journal for the first time since the trial, "He died trying to protect us from the truth." But the truth was the only thing that could have set us free. It had been 13 months since the trial, since the last time she'd said David's name aloud, since she stopped looking over her shoulder. Halver's Creek hadn't changed. Not really. The general store still had the crooked porch sign. The trees still leaned the same way over Main Street. The church bell still rang every Sunday morning like someone somewhere hadn't died. Miriam stood in front of the old Langley house with the keys in her hand. The grass had grown high. The mailbox was rusted shut, but it still stood. She wasn't here to move back. She was here to say goodbye. She stepped inside slowly. The air was thick with stillness, the kind only grief creates. Everything had been covered in dust sheets, untouched. She pulled one back from the bookshelf, ran her fingers over the worn wood. In Eli's study, the desk remained empty, but on the windowsill, folded beneath an old receipt, was a photograph she didn't remember putting there. It was of her and Eli, younger, laughing, before the debts, before the silence, before the rot. She stared at it for a long time. Outside, the wind stirred. She walked to the back porch, stood beneath the same sky they used to sit under for hours, sipping coffee, naming stars they couldn't see, and for the first time in a long time, she let herself miss him. Not the version twisted by guilt and secrets, but the man who once sang to her off-key while painting the nursery. She whispered, "I forgive you, not for what he did, but for what he became." As she walked away from the house, keys left in the mailbox, the photo in her pocket, she didn't look back, not once, because some places weren't meant to be returned to, they were meant to be survived. It was Noah's idea. To return to the cabin, the one Eli had bought before life became tangled with numbers and silence, the place where so much was supposed to begin, and where so much had quietly ended. They drove up together that fall. The trees were fire orange and the air sharp enough to clear thoughts neither of them wanted to speak aloud. Noah was 20 now, taller, quieter, but he carried himself differently, like someone who'd seen behind a curtain too soon and chosen to stand anyway. The cabin still creaked in the same spots. The porch still leaned slightly to the left, but the door opened easier now. No resistance. They spent the weekend fixing small things, replacing nails, tightening loose shutters, restaining the deck. It felt good, not like erasing the past, but finally adding to it. On the second night, they lit a fire and watched it burn down in slow, orange waves. Noah spoke first. Sometimes I wonder if I'm going to become him." Miriam didn't flinch. "You won't. But what if I already did? A little." I listened to him. "I doubted you. I let him into my head." She reached over, placed her hand on his. "Noah, becoming someone doesn't happen all at once. It happens in the moments you ignore your gut, the quiet choices, the silence. And when you realized who he was, you stopped. That's what makes you different." He looked at her. "And Dad?" A long pause. "He stopped too," she said. "Just too late." The next morning, they planted something in the field behind the cabin. A single maple sapling, straight and thin, its roots bundled tight in burlap. They didn't say what it meant. They didn't need to. Some legacies are written in paper trails and court transcripts. Others grow slowly, in silence, in forgiveness, in the decision to start again. In every community, there's a story that hides beneath the surface, one that simmers quietly while the world looks the other way. In Halver's Creek, that story belonged to Miriam Langley, a widow who lost her husband, only to uncover the darker truth of who he truly was, and the brother-in-law who had manipulated them both. From offshore accounts to shattered trust, from a whistleblower silence to a man too afraid to run, this case didn't start with a crime. It started with a choice. A choice to look away. A choice to protect. A choice that cost lives. Today, David Langley is serving a 35-year federal sentence with no chance of parole. Eli Langley's legacy remains a complicated one. And Miriam, the woman who refused to stay silent, now works with financial abuse survivors to help others find freedom through the truth. But we're left with one question. How well do you really know the people who stand beside you? Because sometimes the real danger doesn't come from a stranger. It comes from family. For more gripping true crime stories, like, comment, and subscribe to Beneath the Surface, the dark side of crime, where the truth is never what it seems.